Welcome to RiderChoices Tribe Talk. Tribe Talk is a dialogue with rider coaches for enhancing communications while helping develop and improve our culture. We share experiences and knowledge in our efforts to reduce the crash injuries and fatalities of motorcyclists.
All right. While we wait to see who joins, I'm just going to go on no video so you don't have to watch me eating my dinner.
It doesn't matter either way. People do it all the time. Did you get a chance to look at the reading list?
Only briefly.
Okay.
I saw the questions that you had posted.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it'll be an interesting topic tonight.
Well, kind of freelancing it. Not that it's one thing or another tonight, just getting people together. I
Yeah.
wanted to try a different time because some people have asked for that.
Yeah, no, I saw some of the Q&A comments about it, and I certainly appreciate the flexibility. Not that any one is better than the other for me.
So I didn't see any of the questions or topics, and I'm wondering, where do I see that?
So a couple different places. I put it on Facebook. Are you a Facebooker, Paul?
If you hold a gun to my head, I'll go on Facebook. Or talk real nice, I guess I'd do it. So Facebook, what user or group would I have to dialogue with?
So sorry, I'm trying to get logged on to Facebook.
I'll do the same.
Typically, I send out an email usually on Monday morning. Sometimes I'm ahead of schedule. I can do it on Friday. But typically I send out an email on Monday morning that gives the questions, a few videos, some things to think about kind of in a preparation.
So I'm looking at the email that came yesterday,
Yeah.
PM. Oh, wait a second. Here's another one from you, early AM. Okay. Yeah, I'm not seeing any questions. Experimenting with times. At a topic list. Okay, maybe if I click read more.
Yeah, I had to go in to read more in order to see the questions.
Oh, wow, it's interactive.
Oh, I know. Don, you could make life easier for us.
I could.
What fun would that be?
Fun would that be?
He's giving us the building blocks.
Not all of us are retired. Some of us have full-time and then some jobs.
I think my volunteer time is like a full-time job lately.
Well, yeah, there is that. There are at least I know how much you dedicate to us.
It's the other stuff that seems to be like sucking my brain lately. I've found I've had to take a break from all of this, and which is good sometimes.
Yeah, you decided we should have 2 tribe talks this week.
Well, this is my experiment for the week.
Ah,
I got to grow somehow this week. So testing it out.
You mean you have to figure out new ways to mess with people?
I consider it challenge and support. In my own brain, I'll justify it there.
You know, honestly, that's some of the reason that I like some of the things in some of the ways we deliver curriculum is I feel like I get to mess with people and see what happens. Like, for example, with the Riding Academy and the history cards, I know Mark knows for sure how I deliver the history cards, and it's a way for me to mess with people and see what happens and see how people respond to it.
See, I think we have to be more academic with, it's not messing with people, is we're conducting a gap analysis.
You call it what you want, I'll call it what I want.
Only because I happened to look at a 2007 slide deck this week on gap analysis.
What do you think, Mark? Have you been messing with people since I've introduced you to how I use the history cards?
Well, I've
Or
never
gap analysis?
I've never quite been able to pull off your move as smoothly, but yeah, just doing stuff, just seeing how the class reacts, finding out, figure if it gets a positive reaction, they're probably going to remember what they're doing.
In the military, we call that probing.
Yeah.
You probe the enemy.
So for the 99% of you who don't know it, with the history cards, there are many ways to deliver it, but the way I like to deliver it is I tell the students, there's these history cards, and on one side there are pictures of critical moments in riding in Harley-Davidson history, and on the other side there are word descriptions, and somewhere in the classroom there's a poster that matches the history cards. And I don't point out the history poster. I put the cards somewhere in the center of the room, and I tell the students, you will have 5 minutes to put these cards in chronological order. And I make a real dramatic effort of clicking my stopwatch, and I don't tell them, I don't give them any other direction other than you as a class, as a team, will have 5 minutes to put these in order. And I just say go, and I set the cards down in the middle of the classroom where they're not near anyone, and then I get an opportunity to wait and see who in the class are the natural leaders, you know, what the personalities are of people, who's a leader, who's a follower, who's a silent observer, and so forth. And then I start putting the pressure on them. You know, I'll say, okay, 2 minutes have elapsed. You know, you only have 3 minutes left. You better hurry up, and say things like that. And then once I feel I'm getting my point across, and some of them actually will look at the poster, and Mark and I even experienced this in one of our Rider Coach preps where a candidate was looking at the poster thinking, well, I don't know, can I use the poster or can I not use the poster? And see if they decide to use the poster or not. But it's very rare that any of my participants actually put all the cards in order within 5 minutes. Even, and I, like I say, I put pressure on them. And then at the end of the 5 minutes, I pick up the cards and I accidentally drop them all over the place. And I tell them, look, this activity didn't really have anything to do with putting these cards in order. It had to do with things you have to do when you're driving. It had to do with searching around your environment and figuring out what information would help you make decisions. It had to do with making decisions under pressure, which you have to do when you're driving. It had, you know, the searching and evaluating and so forth. And it had to do with cooperating. It had to do with working with other people to accomplish something. And it helps me tie in searching and evaluating and executing and cooperating and being good drivers out on the road. And it helps me as a rider coach assess the personalities in my class, because by the end of that 5 minutes, I know which students are going to be my leaders when we go through that entire course, which students are the silent observers, which ones are the followers, and so forth. And like I call it, in my mind, I get to mess with people and I get to see how they respond, and take advantage of their response to help them grow.
So you did a gap analysis, found all the learning styles.
I get to mess with people. Come on, let me have my way done. Yes, I do a gap analysis and I do figure out their learning styles, and it's a super fun way to do it. And
I take that back. It's not learning styles, but you find out a little bit about the students.
Yeah, it's their personality styles. It is their learning styles. And it truly their learning styles, because it's how they interact with the world and how they learn and how they process. And it's where I get to have fun, but at the same time, I get to very quickly figure out how I can help my students. And I was very sad at one point where Riding Academy, where Harley Davidson decided this was an optional activity, because there's so many positive things that come out of it.
So I had a different topic question for the group. If you guys are ready for a little challenge here. So first off, just a question poll. How many of you supply forms for classes versus make or require your coaches to supply forms, like blank test forms and waivers and stuff like that?
I think
Where I'm at, it's all supplied by the provider.
so I think you have to delineate, because you're a state person and most people here are not state. They're either individuals or they're providers. So there's 3 different, maybe even more possibilities here, Justin.
Yeah.
Okay, and state with what you are.
That was the perspective I was going to share, Justin, is you may want to check with your Office of General Counsel what Wisconsin's State Office of General Counsel told our motorcycle safety program for the state. Was it really enhance or really enforced for the sites that if you wait until a student walks in the door to have them sign the waiver, they're essentially signing it under duress, and that sites should provide to the students somehow a copy of the waivers that they will sign before the class starts, so that they've at least been given the opportunity to read them ahead of time to reduce liability. Now, with that said, that was several years ago. Our Office of General Counsel attorney told us that. And since then, we have right now at least 2 lawsuits that are going on, and I haven't heard anything other than they're going on, that the courts have said MSF's waivers are worthless and threw them out, even with providing them ahead of time to the students, and even considering at least one of the sites of which I'm familiar tries very hard to reduce their liability.
Gotcha. Let me rephrase, because it's not just the waivers. I'm just talking forms in general, because we've had a similar conversation about that. And thank you for reiterating that, because yeah, you're right. Our general counsel says something similar as far as the worth of the waiver. But just forms in general, waivers like test forms, post-class evaluations, the things like that, just the act of providing the forms, that's all.
Now, in Arizona, the state does not provide any forms at all to the programs. The programs provide their own, and the programs provide copies of all forms used to the state for approval. But the programs are entirely responsible for making sure that they have everything that they need.
See,
Justin,
I find it.
Justin, are you asking more specifically though, heading into a training weekend, whether or not coaches are responsible for bringing their own forms and documentation to a training site?
Yes, more or less.
I mean,
Yeah.
the reason I'm asking it that way is the schools that I've worked for, in both New Jersey and currently Tennessee, do supply that information. The schools in New Jersey that I've worked for does keep a fixed set of materials in a desk or a file bin located in each connex at each range location. So there's everything from class rosters to end of course evaluations and everything else in between, whether it's incident reports or copies of the test booklets or the test result materials, and pretty much anything that a rider coach needs to have their hands on during a training weekend. My experience in my new location in Tennessee is a little bit more recent, but they don't seem to provide it in a fixed location. But what I've seen is the program director, not the state director, but of the owner of the school specifically, is handing off a briefcase of materials either the day of the class at that early morning or maybe a couple of days ahead of time to one or the other coach with same kind of content, blank forms, etc., copies of rosters, etc.
So that file accordion, yes, thank you, Richard. That's a good way to put it.
Sure.
So I guess let me clarify. The reason I'm asking is because it's historically, traditionally been that case where there's been a file accordion on premise, and it's up to the provider to go and make copies. Where I'm asking if is it worthwhile to have each individual coach have their own little mini accordion and not rely on the provider to, extra waivers, extra test forms. Sure, they'll provide the roster.
No. Don't put the onus of that on the instructor or on the coach. Whoever because now you're going to have all different types of alterations, or, oh, I don't have any of this form, I don't have this form, it's okay, we'll do it later. I work for Mass Motorcycle School up here in Massachusetts. All right, at each one of the 3 different sites, first off, if you sign up for the course, the forms are emailed to you. You're expected to print them out, sign them off, and bring them to the course. All right. So when you come into the trailer, whoever the instructor is, coach, whoever it is, collects those, verifies that all the information on it's correct, and that they've filled them out correctly. If they forget, which they do, I have hard copies there. So each one of the sites in the classroom has a file cabinet, for lack of a better term, a big 6-foot by 4-foot cabinet full of any forms that I need. So I have them on site. So it's on the owner or the provider of the school to have those forms on site. You can't put it on the responsibility on the instructor. I don't think that that's right. We've got enough to deal with. I forgot my briefcase. I forgot my accordion with all of my forms in it. You know, it's on my other bike. It's in my car. I rode my bike today. No, the owner of the school or the provider of the school should be responsible for having all of that, all those forms and all that information on site so that the coach, the instructor can walk in if needed, and here you go. And it's all standardized.
So I have a middle ground here too, because sometimes, you know, site providers do get overwhelmed and make mistakes, or programs, because I used to work for a program that, you know, delivered all that stuff to me. I don't think it's bad for a rider coach to have a few of those forms handy on that off day when everything goes just wrong, and I can pull them out of my, you know, I wouldn't say rider coach guide, but, you know, my bag of tricks, and have them available so I don't have to cancel a class or make people wait an inordinate amount of time.
I don't disagree with you, Don, but the primary person in this example, Dave, that owns the school for the last 10 years, that's how he's done it. For the 20 years prior to that, the previous owner was the same way, the same mindset, that the owner takes responsibility for getting the forms to the students.
But I think, like Rita said, it depends on how the state program is structured as to what drives the train on that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to drag it out, but as Rita said, you know, that there's lawsuits against this. Is this because everybody's supposed to get a trophy, or, you know, I don't even want to, I couldn't imagine it.
Can you imagine not having them filled out and then have something go wrong?
Well, that if they're not filled out, then you're not getting on the bike.
But that's what I'm saying. I mean,
yeah.
You have state lawyers that say they're not worth the ink that you spend on it or the paper that you buy for it. But in all actuality, you know, it is a step in letting people know what risk they're about to get themselves into, and whether they've had a minute or 4 days to look at it. It's one step closer to, hey, you know what you're getting yourself into at this point. It's important, regardless.
I would have thought that they would have done some type of research prior to getting into the class.
Man,
I know it's wishful thinking. I know.
If you can make things easier for your coaches, do. If you can get out of your coach's way and make it easier for your coaches to get to the cards, get out of their way.
Keith, I am so glad to know I'm not the only one who wears rose-colored glasses.
Well, I mean, Dawn shut off my video, so.
I just bailed on a weekend. I just bailed on a weekend because, one, I didn't know if I was going to have a vehicle. We had a whole bunch of stuff go down with our truck and bikes and things like that. And two, it was I just found it way too easy for me to say, like, you know what? I'm not sure I can make it, so I'm going to go ahead and just not do it. And also, there was gravity in my direction that said, this particular provider can be a pain in the ass. And no, I don't have to tolerate that. I'm not leaning on this for income. Some people are. But if you're leaning on students, if you're leaning on instructors and you need instructors, then once they've learned how to coach, and you say, now we get to the part where I teach you exactly how I need the paperwork to go in the manila folder, because it makes it easier for me. Make sure you fill this out and sign this diagonally and use crayon on that. I'm sorry, I'm not available that weekend. And it was surprisingly easy for me to tell. Make that a possibility. Pre-populate everything that you can. And a good instructor will have things ready on hand. Oh, this happened to a person. I am customer service. They deserve the opportunity to resolve this so that they can take the class. here is the resolution. I have a blank copy. Go and fill that out. But otherwise, if you're going to stand on the shoulder, I don't want to work for you. And maybe you don't want me to. I get that. Don't lean on us so hard that you're just making the paperwork easier.
The good comment in the chat by Hi. I hope I pronounced that correctly, man. This brings up a really good thread, though. Justin, I don't want to deviate too much. Is it okay if we continue? Are we there? Okay. My question then becomes, doesn't this speak? I'm into the rider coach life cycle, or how do we recruit good rider coaches? How do we establish those relationships with them? How do we improve our environment and our community by embracing it and taking care of each other? Doesn't this whole line of questions and thought and who should provide what, doesn't it go back to the relationship that we established from the get-go with, from the state to the provider to the rider coach to the student? Shouldn't it all be kind of I don't know, almost automatic, because we've developed those relationships before we run into, hey, I don't have my paperwork, or that we develop those relationships before, hey, you got to put it in the manila folder this way? Because I've been around people like that, and it's like, okay, I'll do that for you. But doesn't say a lot about how we do business as a community if it gets to, well, you should have provided that, or I should have provided that, or there gets to be that frustration.
Yeah, what was one of your 3 questions, Don, that you prefaced this meeting with?
Oh, you want me to remember my questions after I put them out to everybody?
How would you describe the community of rider coaches? How would you define the rider coach courage? And how would you define rider coach responsibility?
Oh.
And 3 really good video clips that would have been very helpful had I watched them.
How do you know that? Did you watch them?
No, I'm seeing them and I want so bad to click on them, but I'd miss the meeting.
So relating back to everything that was just said about that, Don, and you asking your question, doesn't that just all go back to basic human respect?
It does. It does.
So I think that's what many of us get back, or saw where the appeal for doing this is. We have that human respect towards each other to try to make this the best for each other. And so that really does need to stop at the top, or start, at the top and make its way down. Yeah, and I know you and I have already had this discussion about 4 years ago.
Did we?
Yes, we did.
I don't remember that night. I think I was drinking IPA.
But anyway, it all starts with that basic human respect, and that's what I like to really base everything that I do when I'm out there coaching or I'm out there teaching a prep, is just giving the individual the respect that they deserve as a human being. And I think when you do that, then a lot of those things that you were just talking about, the responsibilities of what the coaches are willing to do and how they will strive to become better, will take care of itself if you start at that base point of treating them with respect.
So let's take it a point further, because I started with, the program and then the provider or site, the rider coach. What happens above the program that can change the relationships all the way through? Say, instead of a state, maybe there's, the federal government providing guidance, or a curriculum provider providing guidance. Is that important when it comes down to the program, the state program?
That all depends on if the state program is going for federal money or not. Right. In a lot of ways, that does make a huge, so model national standards become an issue if the state program is trying to utilize some of those federal monies in order to enhance their program. So it definitely has a trickle down effect on that.
I opened up a door there for somebody that wants to take. How involved do we get beyond just the day-to-day grind? How deeply do we look in at the bigger system? I started writing this week. You guys just pull it out of me.
There are systems all over the place, and it's a matter of
Rita, you muted yourself if you were meant to be talking some more.
Oh, I don't know. I'm pushing buttons here.
There you go.
Too many things going on at once. Thank you. There's systems in place all over the place, and it depends on how we can maximize any particular system to capitalize on our goals, whatever they might be. I mean, you know, as far as someone mentioned with the federal system, it depends on if you want to get grant money, because the federal model national standards, which really are, they call them model national standards, but if you dig into it, you'll find that they are minimum national standards. If you're not meeting those standards, and if you're not meeting many of the other standards that are written into the federal code, then you can't get, as a state, you can't get grant money. And if you're a site, if you don't meet whatever the particular state has for standards, you can't get grant money. And if you're a site that's not necessarily trying to get grant money from the state, say you're trying to get some grant money from, I don't know, a bait or someone else, if you don't meet their standards, you can't get grant money. And if you don't meet your customer demands, you can't stay in business. So it's just a matter of balancing all those things out.
Right, but there needs to be upfront a determination of who we're actually working for. I mean, is our objective to meet the needs of the state or the federal government, or who's providing us funding? Or is the objective to deliver a consolidated, concise, well thought out program for the benefit and safety of our students?
I mean, in the end, you are working for your students, because if you don't have students, it doesn't matter how much grant money you get. If you are offering classes for free and you don't have students, then you don't have a business. You don't have anything to offer anyone. So somehow we have to figure out ways to spend the grant money or spend our student tuition effectively to entice students to want to buy our product, buy our classes.
So this I've like to show an example of what I call student-driven success or motorcycle development. Let me get it. You guys got me thinking again. The problem that I have with this is I wrote it so long ago, I didn't know what I know now. So it's a little bit shallow, but it kind of gets to this. Let me see if I can share the screen. Of course, I hit the wrong button there. So this is student-driven motorcyclist development. Can you see it?
Yes.
And so, can you see my arrow? Does it come through?
Yes.
All right. So, you know, this is kind of a flipped upside down triangle in my mind, because the CEO of the development is always the student. They're the ones who need the development and should have a say in how it's done. And then we have rider coaches that provide that development to the student. And then, of course, site managers that support that, and a provider or a state organization that provides that. But what's missing on this is the fact that those federal regulations actually do make a difference, and that federal guidance located in the NAMs or the administrative standards or the curriculum content standards, all of them are important in this process. But we always have to remember that the student is the CEO, and if we don't give them what they need, what they want, then the whole system's broke. So just a thought.
It's a cool way of looking at it.
It's kind of upside down, but they are the boss, aren't they? They're
Yeah.
the ones that we're all here for. If we didn't have the students, what would we be worth? And I like what, I don't know who just said it, but how the system works. We need all parts of the system. I like to refer to it now as an ecosystem, because you take the grass out of the cow ecosystem, and then the cow doesn't survive the way maybe it used to. You start pulling pieces and parts out of an ecosystem, or not supporting all the parts of the ecosystem, and then the system doesn't work the way it should. So it gets back to those relationships. Thank you, Danny, and Justin, that we often talk about. We have to all play our part in the ecosystem. Even Robin.
I think a lot of people have misunderstood my use of the term API and thought I was talking about AI. And it's like, if you don't know what an API is, it's a way to interact with third-party digital services. So am I about automation? Yeah. Am I about artificial intelligence? That shit is dumb as hell.
Man, I was just screwing with you.
Anything productive.
Just
That's
remember.
fair. No, I think that a lot of places would go, if they don't have a person on hand who knows cloud skills or knows anybody who does that kind of thing, if they don't understand it themselves, they're resistant to making use of it because they don't have time for the explanation. Has anybody encountered that kind of thing where there are ways to do things that are quick and efficient and will automate certain functions between customer and provider and coach, but
to an extent, I mean, I'm sorry, I hear what you're saying, Robin, but it seems like to a certain degree, schools, or at least in my limited experience, don't have the capability of making that technological investment to leverage tablets on the range or some electronic scoring information or some other.
Oh, no, nothing like that. No, I more mean when the student is, so I've worked for places, I won't say which outfit, where I have to okay, the student has to bring up their e-course form. Okay, cool. And then they have to bring up their waivers and such. I have to take their ID.
Yep.
And for whatever state it is, I have to read the number on that ID and then physically do this and then look at a sheet, and I have to write it in or type it into a different document. Whereas why wasn't that just populated? Why am I not just looking at the ID and confirming that it is correct on the sheet?
Right.
Why am I doing that? There's a line of people, and then once it's done, I need to make sure that every individual's paperwork is in the proper order before stacking it properly. This is where I'm starting to get into the, it's sounding more and more like a you problem. Sorry about your plight, not mine, and I'm not really interested in it. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
That is part of this eco structure you're talking about. It could be a watch, it could be cogs, it could be anything.
Oh yeah. No doubt.
Make it easier.
And I've experienced both the death by paperwork, and what I'm starting to see more recently is at least a layer or two of that being removed from the coaches realm, at least in terms of manually filling out and copying the driver's license number on 3 different forms. You know, at least somebody is getting them pre-populated now. So yes, I hear what you're saying.
The better it can get, the better it should get. I'm not saying it has to be like the day after something is a possibility that we should capitalize on it, but I do feel like sitting around and dwelling on old methods that slow things down, it's not necessary. If it can get easier, it should slowly get easier. You know, yeah, that's enough of my voice.
So let's just do YouTube videos, and we won't even have to have courses anymore. We can all go back to riding on the weekends.
How to wheelie.
If that's the case, then you can spend more time on the New Motorcycle Riders Facebook page and less time on the MSF RiderCoaches page, because that seems to be the popular trend there.
And we've seen the outcomes of that too.
Yes.
A lot.
Yes.
There was a video I watched, would have been late last week, about the problems with electric mobility in New York and how people are being run over on the street by people on electric mobility carriers, scooters, whatever it may be, you know, bicycles.
I think they term that micro mobility devices.
Well, whatever it may be called now, people are getting hurt. Not only people who are riding them, but the people in the environment of who's riding them.
Well, that's because the barrier to entry is having a credit card handy, so that you can walk up in a smartphone, and next thing you know, you're zipping down streets and sidewalks.
With the same, more distractions.
Yes.
It was funny. There was one that was trucking down the sidewalk, and a passerby said, "Hey, you can't ride that on the sidewalk. You're not supposed to ride that on the sidewalk." And the rider was like, "Well, I can't ride it on the street. Where am I supposed to ride it?" So they were half right, you know?
Yes.
That's true in several states where a lot of these devices, they're not legally allowed to operate them on the street or the sidewalk.
Well, they think those regulatory barriers will stop it, and when you put people in a no-win situation, they're going to do one or the other. I mean, they look at it as a dichotomy, which is the worst evil. At least that's how I would look at it. We'll pick on Mark Weiss because he's been so quiet. And Rick Pencer. You changed your room, man. Is this your Tuesday room?
This is my basement.
Ah.
I've abandoned my computer with the black and white camera, and moved up into 2023, and I have all you folks on my phone right now. I will be adding the Ranger game in 20 minutes, though.
So Rick is using my mobility tonight so that he could participate.
I am, and listening to everything. I think we all have to strike a balance. You have to have structure, but depending on who you're working with or for, determines how we move down the line. As far as who does it's nice to have paperwork done, but it's not always convenient. It's not always it's not always possible. I worked for a university, and they were very the big concern was security of everyone's personal information, and waivers for taking photographs and waivers for putting stuff online. So everywhere we come from in as far as in the training, everyone wants to do it a different way.
And thank you for all the comments, by the way. I think a combination of what you all said really influences my thoughts. So especially Brent Strook from, or what the heck's his name? Strox from Florida, because that's the way we've always done it, versus how much instructor responsibility do we give them versus what's going to be easiest and best for the future. I especially like Danny's comment about how do we back up each other? Like, how do we just support each other? I think that those are all great comments. Thank you all.
It was a good question. Bill had a good question for me was it 2 or 3 days ago? It was a little bit longer than that. What was it, Bill?
I just wanted to poll the group to figure out where I work for. I'm an independent contractor, so all my revenue coming in is on a 1099. So I'll have to, report that, take care of all the taxes, things like that. But I wanted to find out from the coaches that I coach 2 different places. One, I'm an employee, which is State University, so that's simple. I get a paycheck. The other is 1099. So how do you handle this, quote unquote, as a business? I know we're coaches, but if we're being paid on a 1099, an independent contractor, we're a business person and we're responsible for the things that go along with that. So I didn't know if anybody had any words of wisdom of how they maybe track their expenses or what expenses they consider trackable, those kind of things from the business aspect of it, because we never went over it. Rider Coach Prep never even touched on the fact that you're basically going to now have a little independent business if you're on a 1099.
Are you an LLC, Bill?
No, I'm not an LLC. I'm just, I'll have to file it as a Schedule C on my 1040 as, because the LLC really protects me from the liability, doesn't change what I can deduct and can't deduct.
Quite literally limited liability corporation, sure, but it also it can really simplify your taxes. If you have it, and it can be a side hustle. If you've ever dealt with a tax accountant at all directly, you can relate to them how the money works, and they'll kind of tidy things up for you on the cheap. Really, on the cheap. Well, that's what I do because everything's under just multimedia, and that can be defined in. But in the end, the organization of the taxes, it's much simpler. And if you work with the right provider, you can have them make the check out to that LLC instead of your name.
Yeah. Okay.
For some people, depending upon.
Is my connection that bad?
No. For some people who, are in the position to be in a 1099, they may not coach enough to put forth the effort to be an LLC.
Yeah, if you're only doing a few, but I'm coaching more than just a few. So, and it's not going to change my world dramatically, but if I have the opportunity to take some of the money and offset it with an expense, so I don't have to pay taxes on it, that's what I want to do.
You can be very creative with that. The expenses for doing the business. I mean, I've done it off and on for years. Motorcycle expenses. If I use that motorcycle only for training, then to me it's a business expense. Or if I use it mostly for training, you can delineate that on your taxes.
I had an opportunity to chat one time with a person from the Wisconsin Department of Revenue, and I asked them about, as a rider coach, I'm required to wear gear and I'm required to ride a certain, I'm required to ride on a regular basis. And so based on that, what can I write off? And the basic answer was, well, test it. And once it goes to court, we'll let you know if you can write it off or not.
Yes.
Lovely. Okay.
And that was kind of the answer I got from the federal IRS as well. I was on the phone with them for something unrelated, and I asked them, just hypothetically, how do you find these things out? And they said, well, corporations usually spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a ruling from us. So if you want a ruling on what you can write off and what you can't, you're more than welcome to pay that kind of money, and we'll give you a ruling.
Yeah. Well, do coaches treat it as a business for the most sake, or you just treat it as extra income and you just pay the tax on it?
Once again, it depends upon the situation, but most kind of, that really get involved use it as a business. And I'll give you an example. I got a request from my state today to provide my driving transcript, my license, how
Right.
many points do I have? 0, by the way.
DMV form.
So everybody knows. But I had to spend $13 to get that transcript to turn it into the people who work for the people who provide the transcripts. I think is ridiculous. But to me, that's a business expense,
right,
or being a rider coach for the state. So I used my business account that I set up for only business things, and that goes against the expenses of the business.
It's difficult though, because business expenses don't mean this is the amount of money I don't pay in taxes. It just lowers the overhead. It doesn't help as much as.
But I'm going to pay that money anyway, right? I mean, if I want to coach, I have to do that. So keeping track of that as a business expense is important.
Well, for instance, this year, I did RCP. It was hotels involved, a lot of travel involved. I did 3-wheel, same thing, hotels, added up to a fair amount of money. So I want to be able to take that, offset that against the money I'm earning, so I can lower the income to pay less tax, because it's legitimate expenses. I don't think that can be challenged, or I had to go get certification to even do this. That's, okay. If I said I went out and bought a $20,000 motorcycle because I need to ride, now that may be challenged. But travel to and for to the ranges, travel for certification. If I need to buy, I bought a special 3/4 helmet just to wear on the range, because I don't wear a 3/4 helmet when I'm riding. I ride full face. So, but it was a cheap helmet, $67. So I'll throw that against the expenses and those things. And I just didn't know, we've always talked about the coaching aspect. Being it was the end of the year, and starting to think about getting prepared for tax returns, I just wanted to throw it out to the team to say, hey, how do you do it? What are you doing? Are you not even worrying about it because there's not enough income, because you don't have enough classes to worry about it?
I'm not a tax attorney or an accountant or anything like that, but what my understanding is that the IRS will let you lose money for essentially 7 years, and there's something to do with that's based on, that's how long it takes a horse company to start earning money. So as long as you show a profit at least once every 7 years, you're okay. And if you have other income, a real job to offset, you can take all those losses you experienced this year, and because of starting your business, Bill, and use them to offset your taxable income from your real job. So you could substantially reduce your taxable income for this year. And you're giving a good segue, Bill, to, I see High has been posting several things about bringing in new rider coaches, and I hope at some point soon we can segue to new rider coaches, because he's posted some really interesting things about talking with students as far as, hey, I noticed this good student who might make a good rider coach, and how he facilitates bringing them in.
Yeah, no, thanks. I got the answer to my question. We can move on.
Well, I got to give you some more feedback then, because the position I just left, my most recent full-time position, we transitioned all the rider coaches that we could to W-2 because the tax code changed about 2 years ago. And after you do the test on tax code, at least where we were in Virginia, our lawyers and accountants told us that we had to employ people that way, that just having contractors would no longer work. So it depends greatly upon where the business is located and where you're coaching as to whether you can get away with that from a business perspective. I think for most people though, rider coaching, you're not going to make, a living's worth of stuff off of it. It's going to be treated as a small business, 1099, and then your deductions accordingly. Not that I'm an accountant, lawyer, or business owner. Go on, Lynn. You got something to share.
Here it's very simple. Unless you're an Institute of Higher Learning in New York to do driver training, you're a driving school. And if you're a driving school, everyone's an employee. So there's no wiggle room.
Yeah, that's something that I would apologize for if the people I was working for said, we are legally not allowed to pre-populate a driver's license. That's an answer, that's a legit answer. If they said papers need to be put in this order in the manila folder, that because of the state, it's a state mandated thing, I would agree to this. I see you smiling, Morris.
But Robin, if you're whoever's hiring you to do that job, hopefully they're all employers and not contract people, because if they're telling you exactly how you need to provide every little detail, tying back to Bill's question, that sounds more and more like being that you're an employee. And I think about one place where I was an independent contractor. However, I every year got invited to the employee Christmas party, and I had to wear my business provided uniform with my name on it, and they provided me with business cards that said,
your flare. Were you wearing
my
your flare?
name and their business. However, and they provided everything for me to do the job. But somehow I was an independent contractor, and boy, you look at the IRS code and there's no freaking way that I fit as an independent contractor.
I'm 100% in agreement with you, Rita. It doesn't pass the litmus test, either the current one or the previous one for the feds, and it doesn't pass it for the state. And I have for 3 years been trying to figure out why everyone does that. And like Don said, with the changes in the tax code, we've gone to the point where it really doesn't, it all comes out in the wash. If you want to scratch your head, look at the IRS litmus test for 1099 contract work.
Like 21 questions.
Yep.
Not that I've read that or anything.
Shh. Sorry, I was waiting a whole hour for us to start, and then I realized this was a one-off, and then looked at the time and realized I was an hour late.
It always comes down to you arrive when you can and you leave when you have to.
Well, I was
Jason?
excited because I have conflict on Wednesday night, and which is why I hadn't been here in so long. And I was super excited that we were doing it on a Tuesday night.
Twice, back to back tonight and tomorrow, right?
Woo-hoo.
I'm getting my heavy lift on.
Although I'm not.
Because
haven't
next
done-
week there is none because there's going to be the VRETs, and I decide to kind of be off schedule from the VRETs.
That's cool.
You can only have so much.
What I was saying comes off as insanely harsh. It's mostly because we're giving up our weekend to probably get some stuff wrong. I tend to get some stuff wrong, but we give up our weekend to get some stuff wrong, and then have a furnace of response to any mistakes. I think it's starting to fatigue me more and more. There are places where I know I'm going to be comfortable coaching, but there are places where it's just so constant that I'm growing weary of doing this. Mostly because of we need you. And now here is this massive contractual process you have to go through to get anything done. I know the cards and the students into the process, but if you're not prepared in the office to handle what's heading your way, I don't want to carry that for you. I'm just not interested in doing it. And I guess I'll soften the blow by saying I'd rather just not do it at this point. I've got other gravity. This is supposed to be more levity, manner speaking.
Yeah. They noticed that I wasn't what I used to be.
We noticed that you're unmuted too.
Oh, thank you, Robin.
Did you?
There's always so much love in this.
Well, I'll be parting soon for the game, and I'll catch up with you all tomorrow.
I kind of came in the middle of the whole Robin thing, but as a site administrator and someone who does the paperwork all the time, we have students, we're using Bookio now for the enrollment. They come in, there's some physical applications that they fill out when they arrive at class. And we have to check to make sure that what they've written on their physical application matches what's on their license. And ultimately, all that stuff gets entered into RES, and RES has made that easy for us by allowing us to move stuff. Well, hopefully it's still to say that we can move information over from the e-course database. But in any event, the coaches have to take a minute and just make sure that what's on the license matches what's on the printed application. And, sometimes they drop the ball. They'll initial the application. Yeah, everything's good. And like, clearly you didn't look at this because they didn't even fill in a driver's license number and you checked it was okay. So, my head explodes. But, if you it takes less than a minute for each student to just take their license in hand and look at their application and make sure that stuff matches. And, if you just take that minute, it gets done. It doesn't take a lot of time.
I find that's legit. I think that's legit. And also, who hipped you to Bookio?
Actually, I talked to a bunch of people, but Jason had kind of indicated that he was happy with it. And so far, I'm happy with it. It's doing the job for us.
Nice. Well, I agree with you that the data that's being put into the folder, it's got to be right. That's on us.
Yeah.
We're going to validate that for sure. It's not just like, oh, hello, hobo. Would you like to try a motorcycle today? Sure, you're apparently a 16-year-old girl, like this is not a reality on paper. That has to be validated. I give you
right.
that. I would love to see as much pre-pop as possible so that I can verify it and get to work without crumpling up papers and juggling lines and figuring out whether or not.
Well, when we were using RES for the enrollment, what was in RES. So they were comparing what was in their license to what was on the the enrollment, the roster that was printed out of res. So same thing though, it's the same amount of cross-referencing. And, every now and then they make noises about, oh, we'll automate it. Students come in, they'll swipe their license and it will get entered to somewhere. And, that's good until the swiper doesn't work one day. And, I have concerns about that. And also that at the back end, they'll say, oh, well, if we're swiping, all that information has to get transferred instantly with multiple sites at different locations. That instant thing isn't always instant, so I have
Okay,
concerns
so-
about it being
so
more
back up a
automated.
step. Back up a step to where you said has to. So let's look at it this way. They have to bring the paperwork in, filled out, ready to rock. And there just happens to be a SKU that says they checked in. SKU doesn't work, okay. We still validate the paperwork, but the process of check-in is just expedited where it can be. The fallbacks would be in place as well. So that data has to be logged. I think that if we remove that from the mix, that data is a convenience that will hopefully work, but we still have to verify the paperwork is correct without us having to type anything in manually or write anything manually on hand. Like
It astonishes me
a no
how
problem,
often
only solution.
students, it amazes me how often they mess up entering their own data. Their birth date is wrong, their names are misspelled. Sometimes it gets a little bit comical. It's like, really? You got your birth date wrong? Come on.
Well, so I love the idea of warning them. This is how this is going to go. You need to be very careful how you enter this information. Please make sure it's correct. I also agree that we need to look at it. We need to put our own eyes on it as well. I would just prefer not having to scribble my own hand onto it or type something out that I'm reading off of. Like, they can do that. If they get it wrong, we can catch it for them, and hopefully they'll take it seriously. The same thing goes for the attire. People the wrong attire. I'm at this point, I've started reaching out to the students the night before and saying, don't experiment with what I won't tolerate. Don't experiment with that. It'll just cost you money. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm trying to get them ready.
Yep.
I think I've got like 5 minutes of lag coming from me.
I think as a society, we're becoming too convenient-fied, for lack of a better term. We're always looking for the shorter way to do it, but there are certain things that we can't do that way. I mean, we're using Zoom to talk across the United States right now, and that works really well, even in Texas. But it's not the same as being in the room with you guys and having a beer and just cutting it up. It's missing something. And I think the more we try to automate or AI, I'm looking at the bottom of Zoom right now. We have an AI companion. I'm afraid to touch the button, to be honest. Someday I will, but I miss the being in the room with the people. One of the comments from a question I asked 2 weeks ago was, when's the next IRETs? And we all miss getting together and having those conversations in the hallways or in passing or over a beer, sitting at the bar afterwards and getting to know each other face to face. But, I think we're starting to lose that connection with people, and it worries me. How do you see if somebody's going to be a rider coach if you don't see them with people and how they react to people? How do they know they want to work for you? I'm stealing this from Lynn. Yeah. How do you know they want to work for you if you don't spend time with them? They don't get to know you. And I see too many applications come across the desk and say, well, if they got everything they need, we'll just sign them up for an RCP. I think we're missing something. Am I just preaching? Perhaps.
Don, is there a phone call interview to the RCP candidates prior to accepting of their application? Because I know when I put mine in last year this time, they indicated that, hey, you're going to get a call from a trainer or someone, and they're going to interview you, get to know you. It wasn't a thing of, hey, whether you're going to get accepted or not, but to get to know you. And that was on the application. I never got the call. I mean, so type of thing. But I would think if you're trying to vet and trying to weed people out before you accept their application, it's like hiring somebody without interviewing them. And I don't know what goes on in other parts of the country when people are putting together RCP classes, but is there some sort of interview or at least a reference from a current rider coach that you can say, hey, this guy meets the qualifications? How does the process work? Because I'm dumbfounded. In a class of 12, 10 graduated, and as far as I know, only 2 of us are coaching. So somebody wasted time on 8 people, and those people wasted time, which blows my mind because it wasn't cheap. It was 3 weekends, so it's a lot of investment. And why would you go through the whole thing and then not be a rider coach? Why would you not do it? I don't understand.
In Massachusetts, you're usually recommended by a rider coach. Then you go through an interview process. Then you need to qualify by going through the evaluation. And you're also doing practice coaching before you get into the RCP. They actually ask people to to be a range aide, to kick cones before they put them into the RCP. So in Massachusetts, there is some vetting before the money and the time is spent or wasted on somebody like that.
Yeah, my fairly recent experience back in New Jersey did include an interview process, but it was a lightweight interview. It was more of the potential candidates showing up and going through, a 2-hour meeting with the board of directors of the school and getting a sense of what was involved and so on. There was no expectation, or there was no requirement that anybody had to range aid prior to an RCP. The only hard requirement was actually taking the BRC and passing it successfully, and then signing up for the RCP and going through in my case, it was a full week, a weekend plus the middle week entirely, as opposed to multi-weekend. And there was the advice and suggestion about going out and range aiding as frequent as possible, just to get a sense of what's happening out on the range before walking out into it. But it was certainly not a requirement.
So you guys are having a discussion about one of the largest problems we have with selecting rider coaches in the United States is there's very little consistency in how we do it. Mm-hmm. And in many places, they're so short on rider coaches that they'll accept anybody that they can get. I think I don't want to say who said this because they may be in the room. The quote was, as long as they could fog a mirror, we'll select them. I've got that in quotes.
Yeah.
The problem is we continue to do these same things over and over again and having the same results without putting the effort and the time into learning who these candidates are, without scrutinizing them the least little bit in some places. And it really affects the community that we're building, because we get these people in that may not be consistent or have the same mindset about coaching as we are looking for. And oh, by the way, they may be the people selecting people to push forward as a candidate.
In the next
So
iteration.
it exacerbates over and over again. And we've known this problem. I have historical documents that go back at least, I don't want to date myself, at least 30 years ago, that the very same problems.
Right. Well,
hey, Mark, got anything to say about this?
Hey guys.
There we go.
Hi here.
Yeah. Some things never change. There are a surprising number of people who are willing to go through the time and expense of a rider coach prep or going back and instructor prep just to get the patch. And as a trainer, it's frustrating to know that the effort's going to go nowhere.
How many people do you know who have a college degree in something that they're not working in? And I'll out myself. I have an accounting degree, but I do highway engineering for my regular job. So I'm not an accountant. If a person is willing to pay for an education for something, for the patch, essentially, is that always a bad thing? I mean, maybe if we have someone who takes a rider coach prep to get that patch, maybe they end up being a better motorcyclist for it.
maybe, and then there's an obligation on the school as a provider that's employing that coach to vet out their actual effectiveness on range. Maybe they're perfectly capable of doing it doing the dance in a small structured environment, but when it's out there with coaches, everybody has a different level of motivation and a different way of relating that information to students. And I've certainly seen coaches not meeting a school standard who aren't invited to coach any longer, or who I, as a coach, would choose not to coach with for any number of reasons. And I take it as partly my responsibility to bring that information back to my provider. Hey, I've been working with Joe 2 or 3 weekends in a row, and I'm trying to mentor, and maybe there's somebody else that's better at mentoring than I am, but here's some deficiencies that are circulating around his presentation of the material. Maybe we need to look at that. So.
Well, and if you've only got so many spots in a prep, it's better if those spots are filled with people who are competent and plan to teach, not just collect the patch. Because you're taking a spot away from someone that might benefit the program. So it's good if you can pre-vet in advance.
Yeah.
I had something to say. Let's he kind of got stepped on. Let's get him back in here. If he can unmute, there you go.
All right, thank you. So I might be the youngest rider coach in the group in terms of experience level. I went through RCP 6 years ago, so I still remember how I went in the process. And personally, originally when I was like 19, I really want to be a coach, but the requirement from MSF says that minimum 2 years of riding experience, with a BRC certificate, yada yada. And then I went to college, so I forgot. But getting back to RCP, when I saw the advertisement for the coaching position, I signed up. I sent my application into the school because the school wanted a coach, and then the school sent me the packet for the state paperwork to the state, the coordinator, and there was no more information besides, hey, come to the next BRC, participate as a student to see what their students' perspective, and then go through RCP. And I was not given any more information on how to do RCP, what's expected besides the pre-course assignment. When I got through RCP, it was like going to boot camp for me. in my group, because from our understanding, the coordinator wanted to weed out the people that didn't have what it took to be a coach. And, you know, many of us were like, why are we here? Like, what are we doing here? But we worked together as a group saying, hey, we already gave up our weekend. We, you know, did all this work beforehand. So let's work together and get through this thing. And at the end of the course, out of the 11, 10 of us passed. And even the coordinator said, like, holy crap, what did you guys do? They all passed. Like, normally I only have like 1 or 2 people pass. So we just laughed. It's like, wow. So I took that in heart. And I was like, why is it so hard to get coaches to be, you know, people to become a coach? So as I developed, you know, went through my 5 years of being a coach, I was like, wow, we need more coach. There's so little coach, especially in the state of Maine. There's only 58 active coaches in the whole state.
And
So
400 mooses.
yeah, and a couple of thousand Bambis. So the last 2 years, what I done was I kind of did what Rita did, was evaluate my students, figure out who's my leader, my followers, and yada yada. And throughout the course, as I sent them to be leaders, I also sent them with the reflection card saying, hey, try to take care of this for me. Read the reflection. And I would listen to people's response as I set up the cones. And then I do a capstone at the end. But I would read that person. I would understand, can this person handle a simple task of reading the cards? Can this person handle the task of being a leader and showing what is needed? So, and then during breaks, I would talk to these students, just chit chat, just get to understand them, see where they're at in their life, what they're doing with their life. And then if that works good, on day 2, I approach them and say, hey, I really like your personality as an individual. I like your personality as a rider. I liked how you are collaborating and guiding and helping other students. And I had a fun time working with you as my student. I believe that I might have a fun time working with you as my partner. So I'm pitching you the job. I give them a quick spiel about what the job entails, how to be a coach, just like quick 2 minute, nothing more, not too deep, because I want to leave that for the school owner, because it's a school owner's job to recruit this person. So I tell them and they like it. So I was like, okay, I want to take your name and number. And 1 year from now, I'm going to call you, see where you're at in your life. And if you're good and you want to become a coach, I'm going to call you back, introduce you to the school owner, and I'm going to, you know, ask you to do some classes as my range aide so that I can, you know, get your feet wet and understand how to be a coach. And miraculously, I've had 4 students reach back to me after 2 years and say, hey, hi, you remember me? Yeah, I still want to be a coach. So get me in. So I got 2 of them in so far. The other 2 still needs background check and all that fun stuff that we all love, paperwork. And so I got the students in. I have them do range aid. And as they do the range aid during the breaks or my time away from the students, I'll pull them and say, so what did you solve from this group? What did you solve from the problem? I get to start probing. I get to start nitpicking at them. It's like, get them thinking, what does this job really entails? How to really manage it? Can you be in my place 1 year from now? Can you really handle this group of people if you have this group of people? So I get them thinking, and at the end of the range aid, usually about three separate range aiding sessions, they're golden. They know how to set up the cones. They know how to do the demos and how to wear the stand and do it. Then I tell them, okay, now make sure the state gets back to you, get your assignment, you get your IG book and your pre-course, and start studying the book side of everything, because you got the range side of it with me on the range as my range aid. Now do the book. When they go through prep, they're like the golden star. And for me, I feel that personally, that's what I would have wanted to be my experience. I wanted, you know, I wish someone told me, come be a range aid, come see what you're supposed to do. I never got that. I was like, here's the application, here's the day, here's the BRC, go and be a student. Now here's the RCP, go and, you know, try your best to get through it. I was like, holy shit, it's boot camp. But with the way that I have gone my previous rider coaches, it's been swell. Like they get out of the program, they know what they're doing, and they come onto the range. And like I said in the text chat, fresh rider coaches are partnered with senior coaches, and when we do that, we kind of give them the main role, and we're the backup coach, RC2, just to see how they're doing and critique them and help them and like mentor them to be a better coach. So that's how I personally have recruited coaches for the past 2 years. And that's it for me.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
It's good.
What were the 3 questions?
I don't remember.
Community of coaches. What is the the people in this community? What are our responsibility? And I forgot the third one. Sorry.
Define rider coach courage.
So do we have a responsibility as rider coaches to make other rider coaches better if we see issues?
Absolutely.
We have a responsibility as humans to help fellow humans improve.
Rita went deep. And Danny wasn't here to hear it.
Very deep there, Rita.
Everything relates to the BRC, right?
We're all presenting the same curriculum to different sets of students, and I'm sure most of us mentioned that, oh yeah, if you take it at this place over here, you'll get the same curriculum. And we have to represent it the same. If it is the same material, it shouldn't be significantly different taking it here in Austin or taking it in Houston, because we've got a different set of instructors. I'm sorry, Robin?
Said, but Texas is really special though, super special.
Texas
Super
is kind of special. I've actually now taught in 2 states, and it was, for the most part the same. But when I went and taught in the other state, or coached in the other state rather, there were things that were significantly different in how demonstrations were done and how simulated practices were done, and we discussed it and discussed the merits, and I brought things home from there, and I think maybe I left some things there as well, but I think we owe it to our fellow rider coaches, if we see something, to be able to approach them diplomatically and discuss it and see if we can figure it out. And if we can't figure it out together, then we need to be in a place like this, or a forum where we can discuss it with the larger audience, because there is a lot of stuff in the rider coach guide and the range cards that is a little bit nebulous and might need some clarification. For instance, I cringe every time I think about this, but for the first year that I coached, 1 stall was worth 1, 2 stalls were worth 4, because 1 + 3 is 4, and the 3rd stall was worth 5 more, and so that's 9 for stalls. It wasn't, in fact, I think it was here at Tribe Talk that I figured out that if they stalled 3 times during the skill evaluation, it was only worth 5 points. It was incrementing that way, not cumulatively. I'm not above correction, and I'm not above reaching out to somebody and saying, hey, I noticed you skipped exercise 11 to do that, or 12, whatever the blinker exercise is. And I would hope that anybody I coached with, or anybody that was observing me, would feel the same way, that they would be able to talk to me about things that I could do better, that sort of thing. Because when it comes down to the bottom line, we're assisting people in taking their lives in their own hands, and they need to be as well prepared as they can be.
Let me see if I can sideload this back. What you're talking about and what Don asked, see if you can. I'm putting the weight on you guys to bridge this. But going back to the provider, somebody was bringing up the idea of, can we expect that it doesn't make sense to have our coaches be carrying around their own systems of paperwork structure, just as an example. So any provider that does that, I ask you, what is the condition of your ranges? How often are they painted and how clearly marked are they? How organized and refreshed are the bikes in that container? These are things that employer to employer, I'll see very massive differences in. I'll see bikes that are basically a Molotov cocktail with a student on it. And that provider might ask of me, well, do you mind doing my taxes at the end of the day? And the answer is no, I'm not going to do that. You know what I'm saying? So I guess, how clean is your system that you're offering a coach to work in, the environment they're working in, that you feel comfortable sort of knowing them well enough to expect them to carry around their own stuff? Now, how we bring this back to what we were just talking about, I'd like to see that happen, because I think Jason was making some amazing points right then and there. Because like Rita knows that she's the person who taught me how to ride exercise 1 in the BRC2 on my bike. I wanted to be better at it, and she was somebody I was willing to receive information from. That's the hard part. When do you trust the person who's conveying some of this noise? It's not always good noise.
Now, sometimes it's very difficult noise. And so the play on question 2 comes down to really courageous conversations that we've discussed many times here in Tribe Talks. How do you have those courageous, difficult conversations with somebody where you have to table something you don't want to talk about, and they're at the table and they don't want to hear it, but we have to find the courage. I think Rita put it down pretty well here, to be coached, or else you shouldn't be coaching.
That's where I got that from. That's
Yeah.
right where I got that from. I was like, she's the one that taught me how to take on the last cones at the end of exercise 1 in the BRC2. She's the one that helped me get that right. So yeah, and why was that? I like coaching with her. She's got brilliant information to I think so many people in this meeting, I get a lot out of this. It's not just me looking for opportunities to rant. It really isn't. I promise you. I'm walking away with stuff. I just sound probably bitchier than the average. And that's all right. That's,
But from what you've said tonight, I know that I can blame everything on Rita, and that just makes my life so much easier.
I got a question.
The challenge is getting coaching. I love coaching with people who are willing to give me feedback, because it's so hard. I mean, that extra letter on the back of my credentials, that T is my downfall. Being a rider coach trainer makes it so much harder to say to another rider coach, look, I'm a rider coach, you're a rider coach. When we get done with the class, and I'll tell my fellow coach at the beginning of class, when we get done, I want you to share with me something that I can do better. And I can't get it out of him, except for Robin. He is always honest with me about, hey, listen, you kind of sucked at this. And those are the kind of people with whom I love coaching, because I can get honest feedback. And like Robin said, you got to have someone that you trust their feedback. They're being honest, and they're not just trying to be an ass and cut you down.
A lot of what we talk about seems to come back to trust between us and the students, between us and the program managers, between us and the T's. It's hard to work with somebody on the range that you don't trust them to do the right thing, or you don't trust them to be frank with you.
Richard, did you have something, or was it Paul that kind of was teeing up?
It was Paul.
I just had a question about it actually goes back a little bit, but we were talking about grading on engine stalls during the evaluation process. And, 3 stalls is a failure, according to our range cards, the skill test overview. So I was just, I was wondering how, I mean, if, yeah, I doesn't do, don't people usually enforce that, or what's the score? So if you read the blue pages, you read the skill test overview, and it gives the objective for the skill test, and then it has general information, and it goes on to say you will fail if this, that, and the other, and lists about 5 or 6 situations, and one is stall the engine more than 3 times.
More than 3 times.
Right. So, I mean,
the distinction I was talking about was somebody who had stalled it 3 times in the skill evaluation. I was giving them a collective 9 points, adding the 1 and the 3 and the 5 from the standard scoring. Oh no, we absolutely are enforcing the scoring, and sometimes wrong, but I don't think you'd find anybody, especially not here, that's given a lot of leeway for things on the scoring eval.
So you did decide to lighten up on the numbers a little bit on those stalls, huh?
I decided I was writing it wrong. I mean, it makes sense to me. You circle the 1, they stall again. You circle the 3. That I go back and look, and I got 2 circles. They must have gotten 4 points.
Yeah, that's pretty brutal.
Well, what I found though, because I went back and looked at all the stats that I had, and because I'm a nerd and I've got most of this stuff in spreadsheets, but very few people stall 3 times and don't stall the 4th time. You either have a stall or you have 6 stalls in skill test 2, or 3 rather.
And if you stall on the evaluation, you've probably been stalling for the last 8 hours of riding.
Not necessarily so. I see some people crumble.
Yeah, and that'll be the first stall is just the pressure of testing or evaluation. But if they do 3 or hit the 4th, it's, for me, it's always been the people that have been doing it all. I mean, every time they come rolling up to you, you're saying pull the clutch, and
Paul, let's have some fun with this one. Okay, so you get a student who you've kind of tapped in their psychology. You're good with them. You guys are getting along, right? And the student, in my case, was a student who was all mash buttons. If he was nervous, if he wasn't calmly thinking through actions, he would grab front brake, stall out bike, sigh. Every time I talked to him long enough to get him back into focus, he would ride like the rest of the exercise perfectly. But every exercise starts with, I now revert to my completely failed state of non-existent. There's no rider here anymore. So with what you're talking about, or any action on the bike, how I would love to hear people discuss, how do you help a student maintain a consistency of calm that allows them to actually operate the machine the way we're asking them to, the objective, that is. What are some tricks you guys have for that? Because I deal with that all the time, The flooding.
The calm comes from them getting it, and using this as an example, going back to the demo on exercise 4, it's clutch, downshift, and then the brakes, which if they have that as the order, their success rate is going to be higher, which will relax them and let them focus on other stuff, and hopefully those actions will get more simultaneous as the class progresses. But as a starting point, that can help lead to that relaxed atmosphere and success.
Mother may I. If they stall, I walk them through the process. Sadly, fewer and fewer people know what the game Mother May I is. Mother May I, elementary school thing, you had to ask Mother May I before you did anything. And I will tell my students that are struggling getting that clutch in before they stopped, your mother is sitting right there on that left hand grip. You can't talk to her because you're riding, so squeeze that clutch in. That's Mother May I. You need to ask your mom every time you go from stop to start to stop, or gear to gear. So if I've got one that's stalling, we talk about mom's not going to be happy with you. Mom's mad. And usually they look down at their left hand at that point. It doesn't always work, but they know what I'm talking about when I say, where's your mom? What's your mom?
I
This
still say
takes-
flogging's better.
This takes
Pardon?
me back to
Oh.
the gap analysis we were talking right up front. You know, if I have a student late in the course doing something that, you know, has to be fixed or, you know, is detrimental, I go jump into the 5 whys. Why is the student doing this? Was it something I told them? Was it something I didn't catch or correct? And I go backwards with the 5 whys to find the port of debarkation for us going on the wrong trip. And then I go back and address it as if I was at that place again to bring it back to where it should be. So, you know, I think about, we look at students and we're trying to be coaches for the students, but more often than not, the mistakes were made by me somewhere back that I didn't catch that thing I should have corrected when I should have corrected it.
I think that's a spot on thing, but it's a different thing than sort of what I'm pointing at. I don't disagree with you. I think that makes total sense. But if a student has a particular demeanor where they can rise to the objective and instructions, and you've seen them do it, but then they just aren't all there. They revert to what they know doesn't work. There's a line. They revert to what they know will not work. And they use
So
that.
think about what you're saying there from a motor skill development perspective, though. If they're reverting back to what they know, that means what they knew at the beginning of this process was never corrected. Or they were taught something in the process that wasn't appropriate, that needed to be fixed. And that's why they learned it that way up front without correction and thought it was right, and they're carrying it forward. And I'm not saying it's true for everything. There are certain things that people learn and do outside of our 10-hour window on a motorcycle that you're never going to be able to fix. But
yeah, it becomes a cup full thing sometimes.
Yeah.
Too.
When you address it immediately, when you see it the first time, that's why they call them timely tips. If you get it there at the right time, it makes it so much easier later on. And if it continues to squander throughout the course, then and isn't corrected, then we have to make some courageous decisions.
You know, I got to say that somebody that's going to stall more than 3 times on the eval doesn't usually even make it to the eval. I don't know if I've ever had somebody store more than 3 times on the eval. Do you ever have a student, they were doing okay in day 1, they come in on day 2, they shift like crap. And usually I think it's because they're trying to do it like Joe Cool motorcyclist, really fast, instead of just back to the roots of, take it more slowly. And sometimes I tell them, hey, you know what, you're kind of stuffing this up because you're not being deliberate about it. Let's go back to yesterday. Roll off and squeeze, lift up all the way, ease out and roll on. And sometimes if you just slow their jets, it pulls it all back together. Or on exercise 3, sometimes my coaching is, hey, you know what, you're trying to do everything all at once. Let's start out, let's enjoy the ride, and at the very end you can worry about stopping, because they're thinking about stopping before they even have their feet on the pegs, and sometimes just giving them room to breathe gives them time to think, because it doesn't all happen at once. There's a sequence to it.
That's like I can both of what you and Don said. Someone who got me wrenching, this bike has never seen a dealership. 95,000, 2018. This is my girl, because I'm the one doing all the wrenching on it. And the thing he taught me that rang truest was, no matter what it is you're doing, when you are turning a screw or a bolt or a flange, anything, whatever it is you're doing, you can think about what is the final effect at the end, the furthest reach this has. What is this doing to the motor? What is this doing to the tuning? And I say this because it's sort of like how we are communicating with a student, or how we are asking them to take, like you said, a deliberate action. I think that's brilliant. It's sort of like, just remember, you can do this one at a time. You don't have to impress anybody. Just squeeze in the clutch, shift the gear, ease it out right away, repeat. That is some, you can see the end result is they're in motion. And it also, I thought of a way to tie it to Don, but I think my college years fried it out of my brain. So I don't remember what I was going to say next. So do with that what you will.
I'll just add a tip, a tiny tip, relative to shifting. Sometimes students, their foot goes under the shifter, but it's not fully under the shifter. And so their foot gets a full lift up, but their foot has actually come out from under the shifter before the shift lever gets a full lift up. So they find neutral by accident. So I tell them to make sure that, that inside part of your foot actually hits the bar of the shifter, so that the part is on top of your foot. And a mechanic friend of mine told me that if they start to engage the clutch while their foot is in the full up position, that the bike will absolutely go into gear. It's mechanically set up that way. And so, if I have that person that's getting sloppy on day 2 and missing the shifts, I'll tell them, make sure your foot's fully underneath, squeezing the clutch lift all the way, and ease out the clutch with your foot still in the up position. And it always, that combination of slowing it down and taking that bit of care generally has a good result.
I really would like it if MSF would add in the shift procedure for the simulated practice. Get your foot ready. Okay, now lift.
So for me, getting back to your original question, I think, Rob, I try to calm the nerves in the introduction when they're in the classroom, like get them to laugh, get them to understand what they're doing. And I also tell them that when you're in line, think as much as you want. Think about the process, think of what you're supposed to do. But when I wave you off for your turn, take a second, close your eyes, breathe in, breathe out, then go. Don't think now. You already thought about what you're supposed to do. Now just do it. Usually when they're at the front of the line, they're so nervous that it's their turn that they start to brain fart and just like screw up the beginning or screw up the end. So calm them in the classroom, get them laughing, let them know what the expectation is and how to get there. And, try to remind them to breathe in and breathe out. It's your turn to do it. If you do it right, cool. If you don't, no problem. That's what we're here for, to make mistakes, learn from it, and move on. And usually, if people are misshifting in exercise 4, there's always a natural break between 4 and 5 that I do remedial with them to make sure that they are getting the shifting correctly. Because on average, full size or compact, the student is on average making a total of about 8 attempts. And is that enough for the riding career? Not really. So if you can still see that they're, hiccuping here or there, then do the remedial. Hey, come on back, an extra 5 minutes early. Let's do a couple more laps. Just, fine tune it in a friendly manner. So they don't see that they are just messing up. They're just like, hey, this guy wants to give me an extra time to actually have more fun, ride a little more.
You made me consider something I was thinking about earlier today about failure and how had I not failed, there's no way I would have learned what I know. Lynn's thinking about it. Maybe I don't know.
I like it, Don.
I remember all the mistakes I made in my instructor prep, not doing them again, so we definitely learn from our mistakes.
Based on your comments, I've learned a lot.
I think failing's necessary. Imagine if you never failed anything. Would you know what it was like to lose?
I'll tell you all about it. Let's begin. Where do I start? Let's see.
How does it feel?
Apparently,
We'll go
dinner's
about the
over.
person you counseled out in exercise 1.
Oh man, that was wow. That was such a great day. Yeah.
I truly think failing's necessary.
Yeah.
I wanted to be mad at you on that one, Robin, until I thought about
Yep.
it for 20 or 30 minutes. And then I realized that, yes, on rare occasions, you can need to counsel someone out on exercise 1.
The ice just kept getting thinner and thinner to the point where they were now on a bike, moving it back and forth. And I found myself saying, this person did not take their own e-course. They didn't do it. There's no, I mean, there's totally a way that they did. But in my head, I'm thinking, there's no way that they took their own e-course. It didn't happen. They sat by somebody who did. No, like all the things that were just making everything shaky. I was just like, that's it. I'm not willing to do this. I'm not willing to do this. And
I'm
there's
going
a
to be,
certain part of being a coach where go ahead.
I'm going to say that I think that having taken the e-course probably would not have helped your student. And I'll qualify that with, ever since this curriculum came out with the e-course, I've looked at it as 3 completely separate parts. That there's the e-course, there's the classroom piece, there's the range piece. And to me, MSF has designed each piece so well that each one can stand alone. That you can take someone who has not had the e-course, not had any classroom, and you can pull them onto the range, and provided that they are capable of learning and willing to listen to what you're telling them, you can provide the range piece independently and they can be successful in it. The e-course and the classroom piece are separate pieces that enhance their total picture. So, the little bit I've seen, Robin, of what you described with your particular student, I don't think even if she would have done the e-course, and if you would have had the classroom, and even if you would have done level 1 classroom with the student, I don't think she would have been capable of learning on the range.
Yeah, no.
At all.
And
anyway,
there was even a conversation after where this person brought that up. And I basically said, you can consider private training, but the confidence they showed when they pointed at their clutch lever as the rear brake screamed bicycle to me. And I didn't have, it was just too much. I was not going to coach that person that day. It just didn't matter.
Motorcycling is not for everybody.
And
It's
like the students that revert back, if they've got so much stuff in their head, anxiety and everything, you're up there talking exercise 1 and it's not getting in there. If they're not able to follow instructions, they got to go. Yeah. So
the person explained a lot to me that they held my respect all the way out the door, but I wanted them to know that they could, if need be, they could get private training, and that there's no reason why they shouldn't come back, but they need to count they need to do the math first and really be prepared. They need to be more prepared than they thought they needed to be, whether that's custom to them or just custom to them. It's what they specifically needed to do.
I feel that many students that come into motorcycling that don't know much about motorcycling think that it's easy to ride a motorcycle because when they see one of us ride, we make it look easy. And not just as a coach, as a rider on the street. When they see a rider on the street, they just see someone riding. They don't see the problems that person had, the struggles that person had. And when they come to the class, then they see the struggles. But at the same time, just like everyone else said, the anxiety, the pressure, the life plate that they're in their head, just decompressing and putting it all together is just too much for them. So, we need to understand that we're here to help them learn as long as they're willing to put the effort and willing to take what we give them. So straight them out at the beginning, calm them down, give it to them. And if you can see it in their eyes, or like see that they're just too flustered, pull them out and say, hey, maybe today's not your day to ride because you got too much on your plate.
I like the way you phrase that, high, and I want to ask, are we pronouncing it correctly? Is it high?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I could go so many different places with that comment.
It is, people think it's just so easy to ride a motorcycle. And I'll enhance that with saying people think it's so easy to be a passenger on a motorcycle. And I love when I have students in class who during introductions say, well, I've been a passenger for many, many years behind my partner, and I thought maybe I'd like to learn how to ride myself and ride my own motorcycle. And I've run across a few of those students after class and ask them, okay, so you took the class, did you decide to ride your own motorcycle, or are you still a passenger? And they'll say, I decided I really
they
like.
don't want to do it.
Yeah, they've said, you know what? I really like being a passenger, and I've decided I really like being a passenger. But boy, has my partner, my operator, they say I am such a better passenger now because I really understand what it takes for them to operate this motorcycle.
I even have students pull out of riding. They stop and they come back up after the exercise during the break. They're saying like, oh my God, I never knew how much thinking, how much manipulations of the controls, how much effort, how much physical work you have to do to just control a motorcycle. And then, that's when I allow them to say that to this class. It's like, hey, like I said, motorcycles not for everybody. It takes a lot of mind and body effort into this sport. We call this a sport. We don't call this, just riding a motorcycle. It's a sport where your mind and body have to be one to actually understand what to do at any given situation if lady luck tests you.
So a couple, I guess, administrative notes for the get together tonight. I wanted to try Tuesday to see if we could generate any more people coming in. We'll go back to the regular Wednesday tomorrow night, and then I'm going to take a couple week breather because the following week I think is an VRETS week, and then the week after that is Christmas, and I don't know where I'm going to be at and whether I'm going to have the capabilities to run it. So it may be January before I schedule another Tribe Talk after this. The second thing is I want to change and kind of migrate away from Tribe Talk a little bit and call this Rider Coach Life just as a discussion, because I have found a couple people who are maybe not offended by it, but question why we call it a Tribe Talk, and they aren't coming in because of that. And so with that, you can see I posted a link for a Facebook chat group that I named Rider Coach Life. And if you get out to my website at all, you notice I've been manipulating things around, trying to, number one, set it up so that everything is Rider Coach Life, but number two, so that you can start having access to some of the old videos a little bit easier than previously. And that brings me to the third administrative point, where I'm looking for little assistance for people to go through some of the old videos, watch them, write down the main topics, and write a quick synopsis, maybe a paragraph that we can put next to them as I post them on the website, so people know what they're getting into before they watch something for 2 hours and don't get anything out of it. And if we can get to those kind of things, then maybe a table of contents so that it's more readily usable by people that are just coming in. And you have to thank Bill for this all.
You got to also set a filter on there where you can sort it by the color of Robin or Hairheim's nose. How lushed out are they?
And so the question from Bill was, and we talked a little bit about it tonight, was, how do people get paid and how do people deal with that? And in my memory, I was like, man, I know we've talked about that probably 2 or 3 times. Wouldn't it be nice if Bill could jump on the website and just go directly to those conversations and glean something off of it? So if you're interested in helping, just let me know. That's a brief one over the world. But what I'm really looking at is for like a paragraph from each tribe talk so people can find out what information is out there. And if you go out to the website now and you click on any of the major tribe talks I got posted, I actually put a pretty good write-up with them. We need to squeeze that down to make it more readily available for others.
I've got a Descript account if you're interested.
What's a Descript account?
It'll transcribe everything to a text-based format. It can be highly inaccurate, but it's actually, the words will at least make sense and laughably so.
All I'm really looking for, though, is the main topics and a paragraph explaining what went on. So scripting it through AI doesn't get us quite there.
You want the IMDb description of the movie.
I do.
And this is just of the tribe talks that we've done previously. That's what you're looking to do, is just the tribe talks previously.
Yeah. There's only 200 some of them. So there's probably, I don't know, somewhere between 30 and 50 that I've kind of, originally I was doing it. That's all I was doing. I wasn't working. I was just doing videos and transcripts and cut and paste and, the whole video thing, but it got overwhelming.
I would suggest, Dan, that you take Joe West's suggestion and just get people to volunteer to do a couple, because
I would like you to just one.
Right. And so when he's saying who's got 1 through 25, breaking it down into something that doesn't, I don't know.
I was going to tell you, just send me 5 that you want me to do and I'll do 5 of them.
Right.
If you're willing to just assign me 5, then I'll get 5 of them done for you in the next 30 days.
I'll give you one, and then you can come back. I'll give you another one. How's that?
Okay, we can do that. That's fine.
I know reality and how it got overwhelming to me.
Well, yeah, but see, right now I'm relatively unemployed, so I'm giving you an opportunity.
Don, I'll pitch in as well. Send me one. I'll take a look and see how it works for me, and then we can go from
and then
there.
I'll just do it like Snoopy, wah 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 wah, and that'll come back to you just like his transcription system that he uses on TRO.
That's what scares me.
Yeah, Don, assign me one as well, and I think the best way maybe is, as you do one, you get another one type of thing, so you don't have 5 and then you're holding on to them, because somebody's got to be the gatekeeper, so we don't have 3 people doing the same one. That's a waste of time.
Well, that's why I'm kind of tracking who.
Yeah, sign me up.
All right, Bill. I had you anyway.
I was going to ride my ride, but peer pressure got me, so sign me up for one too.
All right, Jason.
I mean, are you looking for somebody to be a gatekeeper in this and not you have to gatekeep it too? Or how about we just start with giving me one?
You wouldn't. First of all, I have to dig them out of the repository. So there's a large. I have one 8 terabyte disk.
Suppository.
There's a bit of range runoff just to get there.
Yes, there is. So it's better that I just, if you're interested, let me know. And will work that direction.
Horton will take one too. He doesn't have a job.
Don,
Damn right. That's why I
some
raised my
positive-
hand.
All right. So it's after 8. We've been at this for 2 hours. If you want to come back tomorrow, you're more than welcome. I'll be here from 7 to 9 for the normal time period. And hey, thanks for showing up tonight. I'm going to leave you with one parting comment. And it was from Kathy Brooks. She texted me a little while ago and she goes, charge your batteries. I was like, what the hell? She goes, I had to leave. My phone wasn't working. The neighbors were looking at me funny because I was walking around. Just recharge your batteries. I was like, what do you mean? She goes, you know that when you get in that group, that's what keeps you going. It recharges your batteries. And you guys do it for me every time we get together. Thank you very much. Have a blessed evening. And we'll see you the next time we see you.
See you tomorrow, Dan.
Sounds
Take
good,
care.
Don. Take care.
Thank you for watching this episode of Tribe Talks, brought to you by RiderChoices. If you are a rider coach, you can catch other episodes by logging into www.riderchoices.com. You can also find links at the Rider Coach Live or Rider Coach Trainer Live Facebook groups. Remember, MSF's 5 core questions and survive the ride. Take care.